Welcome to the Explainer. So, today, we're going to completely shatter the illusion of your digital safety. I mean, you probably think your digital life is pretty secure, right? You use strong passwords, you don't click on shady links, you keep your apps updated, the whole shebang. But what if the very foundation that your security rests on is, well, inherently flawed? Today, we're literally peeling back the layers of digital security. We'll go from the massive global networks that route our calls all the way down to the tiny hidden sensors inside our hardware, just to uncover the invisible betrayals happening right under our noses.
Okay, I want you to plunge into a pretty terrifying scenario with me for a second. Let's say your phone is perfectly clean, zero malware, no spyware, you haven't clicked a single phishing link. You've done absolutely everything right. And yet, an attacker is actively reading your text messages, they're tracking your location, and they're draining your bank account. How is that possible? Well, the problem in this scenario actually isn't your phone at all. It's the invisible network it relies on. Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, the broken network, signaling System 7. To understand how you can get compromised without anyone ever touching your device, we gotta look at our global telecommunications infrastructure. This thing was built back in the 1970s for tiny, closed club of friendly telecom companies. So naturally, it relies almost entirely on blind trust. Take a look at these two invisible components that are tracking you right now. Over on the left, we've got your home location register, or HLR. Think of this as your phone's permanent address book over at your home carrier. And on the right, you've got your mobile switching center, the MSC, basically the local cell tower you're hooked up to at this exact moment. Normally, when you move, the MSC tells the HLR, hey, send their texts and calls over to this new tower. But imagine a thief just casually walking into a post office, filling out a change of address form for your mail, and the post office just accepts it. No ID check, no verification, nothing. Because SS7 is still running on that 1970s blind trust model, an attacker can simply lie to the network about your location, and the network just obeys instantly. So how does that blind trust play out in a real-world digital heist? Well, it's like a cinematic six-step movie plot. First, the attacker gets your phone number. Easy enough. Next, they rent access to the SS7 network from some shady telecom operator, which, by the way, only costs a few $100. Step 3, they send that update location lie we just talked about, basically telling your home network, hey, I'm roaming overseas now. Step 4, they go to your bank's website and hit forgot password. Step 5 is the kicker. Your bank obediently fires off your critical two-factor authentication code via SMS, but because of that lie, the network routes it straight to the attacker's laptop. And finally, Step 6, they log in and drain your account. And the wildest part? Your phone is just sitting right next to you, completely untouched. Now, you'd think this flaw would be flat out illegal to use for banking, right? But here is a massive loophole. Over in Europe, the PSD2 regulations force banks to use strong customer authentication. Makes sense. However, the law technically dictates that receiving an SMS code counts as valid proof of something you have. So banks that are relying on this entirely broken 1970s network are actually still, legally, 100% compliant. It leaves a legal loophole big enough to drive a cargo ship through. It perfectly illustrates one of the absolute most dangerous concepts in cybersecurity. Being compliant does not mean you are secure. It just means the law is validating a fundamentally broken system. Section 2, the hardware fortress, rebuilding the foundation. Okay, so if we can't trust the network, we've got to peel the onion back to the device layer itself. Graphene OS has pretty much been the gold standard for mobile security for a while now, and they've actually thrown down a massive challenge to mainstream manufacturers like Motorola to build a physically secure smartphone from the ground up. Why the big push? Well, what's really interesting about this slide is that staggering figure, 70%. Historically, 70% of all critical security bugs in Android are memory corruption issues, stuff like buffer overflows. These are basically tiny cracks in an app's memory that let attackers just wiggle their way in and take over the whole system. For decades, we've tried patching this with software solutions, but they always come with a massive performance cost. Honestly, software alone just really struggles to fix this efficiently. Enter MTE, or Memory Tagging Extension. This is an absolutely uncompromising hardware demand from the folks at Graphene OS. It literally bakes memory protection directly into the CPU itself. Think of it like this. Every time your phone allocates memory, it attaches a metaphorical lock, and the app gets a matching key. If an attacker tries to access that memory without the right key, bam, the hardware instantly kills the process. And the best part? Zero performance cost.
Graphene OS is also demanding that Motorola pair this MTE tech with a Titan M2-style hardware root of trust, which is essentially a dedicated physical safe just for your encryption keys, along with completely verifiable boot locking. Now, analyzing security properly means we have to be totally impartial about structural risks, especially when we're talking about specific, high-level threat models. For example, Motorola is owned by Lenovo, a Chinese tech company. For users whose personal threat models involve nation-state actors, that ownership naturally introduces a geopolitical risk calculation. We're talking about analyzing national security laws that can compel companies to work with state intelligence, plus looking at the transparency of the hardware supply chain. Again, this isn't about taking sides, it's pure risk analysis that just goes to show how hardware origins directly impact your overall security posture. Let's move to and see how this builds. Section 3, the physical spy, your invisible fingerprint. Pivoting from the hardware layer down to the physical layer, you might think that just turning off your GPS and Wi-Fi makes you totally untraceable, but actually, scratch that. Your phone's motion sensors, we're talking the accelerometer, the gyroscope, the magnetometer, they are silently tracking every single tilt and jolt in your pocket. AI models can take that raw, seemingly random motion data and transform it into an unchangeable digital fingerprint based purely on how you walk. It's called your gait signature, and it's an incredibly precise, continuous picture of your movement. In fact, peer-reviewed studies have shown that AI can identify you with over 93% accuracy. 93, just from passively analyzing a few seconds of your walk through these completely unguarded sensors. We call this the zero permission problem. See, because phone operating systems have historically just treated motion data as harmless, any app can tap into this massive fire hose of data without ever showing you one of those allow access pop-ups. It operates as a completely unguarded side channel attack, essentially creating a permanent biometric ID that you can literally never reset. And honestly, it gets even crazier. There's this startling research out there known as gyrophone, and it proved that these same ultrasensitive gyroscopes can even detect micro vibrations from sound. Yeah, they can quite literally eavesdrop on your conversations just by picking up the vibrations off the table your phone is sitting on. Wild, right?
Section 4, the autonomous threat, OpenClaw AI agents.
So we've finally reached the innermost layer of our digital security onion. And right now, we're witnessing a pretty terrifying shift. We're moving from AI that just passively reads data to autonomous AI agents, like OpenClaw, that can actually execute scripts and act directly on your private system entirely on their own. This introduces a massive, massive risk known as prompt injection, because, let's face it, AI lacks human common sense. An attacker can easily craft a malicious instruction and just slip it inside a seemingly normal piece of text, like a regular everyday email. This brilliantly illustrates the problem. When your AI agent reads that email to summarize it for you, it interprets that hidden instruction as a direct, privileged command. Suddenly, the line between harmless passive data and dangerous executable commands is just completely blurred.
Because of this blurring, agents like OpenClaw open up 5 primary vulnerabilities. I'll go through these quick. Beyond prompt injection, you've got plugin and tool abuse, which are essentially AI-powered supply chain attacks. Then there's local privilege escalation. That's a scary one. It basically transforms your helpful little assistant into LLM-controlled pseudo-malware that starts taking through your private environment files. Fourth is silent exfiltration, which is just invisibly shipping your private data off to an attacker. And finally, compromise via integrations, where a single tiny breach in the AI suddenly pivots right into your Slack, your Gmail, or your GitHub.
The core flaw driving all of these threats is simple, but it's really profound. In secure system design, there's this golden rule, right? You absolutely must separate the part of the system that makes a decision from the part that takes the action. Well, OpenClaw totally shatters that rule. It takes a probabilistic language model, which is really just a system guessing the next word, and fuses it directly with the power to act on your local files. That immense power of an autonomous agent having system access, that is exactly its greatest peril. Why? Because it's entirely controlled by external, unverified text. So the crucial point is, how do we fix this? Section 5, reclaiming the fortress, taking back control.
With our networks betraying us, our hardware tracking us, and AI agents acting totally unpredictably, we just cannot rely on default security anymore. We have to be proactive. So here's your rapid-fire, absolutely screenshot-worthy checklist to neutralize these threats and rebuild your digital armor. Ready? First up, dump SMS two-factor authentication immediately. Upgrade to an authenticator app, or honestly, better yet, get physical hardware keys. That renders those SS7 network hacks completely useless. Second, audit your app sensor permissions ruthlessly. Cut off that passive biometric tracking. Third, if you're experimenting with AI agents, isolate them. Put them in sandboxes like Docker or VMs. Fourth, implement strict human-in-the-loop validation. The AI should never execute a sensitive command without your explicit manual approval. And finally, never ever store API keys in your environment variables. Protect them in dedicated, narrowly scoped vaults. The illusion of default digital security is officially gone. You can buy the absolute best phone on the market, use the strongest passwords imaginable, and do literally everything right. But if you're anchored to 1970s blind trust networks, unguarded physical sensors, and completely unchecked autonomous AI, you are leaving the front door wide open. And remember, autonomous agents aren't just coming someday, they're already here. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. Take a hard look at the foundation of your digital life and ask yourself, is your infrastructure actually ready for the future?